Hi everyone, it's Eileen here from Stress Coach Training and the Spiritual Marketing Club, and I thought I'd do this video for both sides of, both clients and students, because it applies to both of the groups that I work with. So I wanted to talk about the main ways that empaths can actually address empathic stress, okay? And I'll refresh what an empath is and what we mean by an empath. So most of us have some level of empathy, unless maybe you're a psychopath or a sociopath. There is a certain level we all have a certain level of empathy. But when we call someone an actual empath, they have a higher degree of empathy, and that usually comes in because they have a very heightened, what we call extrasensory perception. There's a lot of theories that in many ways sensitives and empaths that are very highly sensitive have they mirror, basically their kind of neurons, I think, mirror someone else's. And basically what happens, an empath has I've met so many different types of empath, they all have different levels, but they will have a level of empathy that they can actually feel energetically what is going on, either in a person physically, okay? So it might be and that they can feel their emotions, they may be able to feel their pain or the energy of the disease or wounding, and there's also people that are quite empathic about they can feel the energy and different things of nature, different energy fields in nature. So basically it's just that what we call that extrasensory perception is more tuned in to certain things, and most people it's some sort of empathy around individuals, around people, and around emotions, and as I said, maybe physical disease or other things. They can feel the energy in rooms, and it's to quite a high degree, and they can feel a lot of things. Now, the problem that an empath has is that we all have wounding, right? And depending on the level of empathy someone has, okay, or sensitivity, and certain woundings that they have, is that those two mixtures are not always the most healthiest, right? So if someone is very, very empathic, right, or very, very sensitive, and they tend to feel other people's, for example, emotional pain, okay, a lot of emotional pain, and they're picking that up, you can imagine that that's quite exhausting, right? And it'll depend on their circumstances, their environment, even in what their environment growing up, if they're exposed to trauma or abuse, or there's a lot going on. Okay, so that can be one factor. It can also, other factors that can impact an empath is their own well-being. If they are, for example, some children are born and they have a very sensitive central nervous system. If you think sometimes babies that have had cesarean section and things like that, they've had quite a traumatic birth, or any baby that's had a traumatic birth can sometimes come out, and you can see there's a sensitivity, they're just a wee bit shooken up, and there's that trauma left in the body. Well, empathy, it's never been quite clear, is it nature or nurture? I think it's a bit of both, right? Because there's definitely the way that the body and the mind and the emotion has developed. But the reality is most empaths are more sensitive to other people's needs. They are more tuned in to other people's needs and pain, okay? No matter if that is mentally, physically, or emotionally, okay? And they tend to be more empathic to a lot of things, like empathic. Some empaths, they really feel the energy of the earth, or even animals and all sorts of things. But most people that are empaths, the challenge comes when you actually feel other people's wounding, right? And they can feel it to a high degree. So you can imagine that is exhausting and it's stressing. And I know a lot of you watching this are empaths. Now, we all have different upbringings, we all have different beliefs, we all have different conditioning, we all learn different things. Some of us actually learn to create healthy boundaries in childhood, okay? And that can sometimes be the family environment, or you naturally knew that you had to do that, okay? Other empaths don't. Other empaths never, because boundaries are actually not in many ways natural for an empath, because they feel everything. They often are not taught to have boundaries, and other people around about them don't understand. And I was someone that I was the eldest of 9, and we all were very close in age, well, most of us. And I never ever developed healthy boundaries. And I was someone with low self-esteem and self-worth. So everyone's needs always came first. Okay, and then I had teenage, and then I was a bit of a rebel. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what was going on, and I struggled, right? And a lot of us can identify with that. But I was also very much a people pleaser, right? And that can come for a lot of reasons as well. It can come from self-esteem, self-worth, and it can also come from the empaths' distorted way to function in the world. Because if they recognise everyone's pain and emotion, for example, if they can feel a parent or a sibling changing if they don't like what they do, and they're constantly finding themselves submerged in other people's pain and suffering and annoyance or frustration, they will adapt to just accommodate everyone around them. That's what you do, right? That's what a lot of empaths do. But you can imagine that causes a great deal of stress. So the big stress, because you become then someone that is constantly submerged in other people's needs, and you do not ever think about your own. Now, I'm an example of that, because even I had a kind of burnout thing. I had a lot of rare medical complex conditions, and I had a lot of bizarre things happen to me. So one of the things that happened to me was I was mercury poisoned at 19, and I also was bitten by something at 14, which appeared later on as if it was definitely a tick, which would account for late stage Lyme's disease. But it's not a straightforward story. But one of the things that I found, even when I was very ill, was that I still struggled. I still was I'm quite a very caring person, a very generous person, a selfless person, but obviously to an unhealthy degree, that, I would always put everyone else first. Very much a bit of a martyr, and a lot of people that are empaths fall into these traps, right? And, a lot of women fall into these traps, right? Men do as well, but there is a lot of women that tend to fall into these traps. And obviously when women become, a lot of women that become mothers make a lot of sacrifice, and sometimes some people can fall into that just from motherhood. But an empath is someone that from often childhood will constantly think of others and do for others, and be very caring and be very emotionally led, okay? Be very tuned into other people's needs, but as I said, struggle. So the biggest stress is obviously the chaos and the general noise and of everyone's emotions and everyone's pain and everyone's needs. And even noise can be, for some empaths, particularly if they're what we call highly sensitive, and highly sensitive empaths will find maybe noise and a lot of stimulus too much. So that's a stressor. You've got the bombardment of emotions. You've got also that inability to say no because you've not learned healthy boundaries, okay? And then if you have your own wounding and you over-identify with certain roles, you maybe think that your role is to do certain things, to be the people pleaser, to be the person that cares for others, well, then you get yourself stuck. So how do you move out of those scenarios? Well, there's some things you can change, and there's some things maybe won't change. Obviously, your level of empathy is part of you, and your level of compassion is part of you. But to move yourself from the external world and your energy, because it's the easiest way to explain it, it's almost like you've got all these energy part of you, and we very much empaths end up out of their body energetically. So basically their energy is scattered, and their energy is everywhere except centered within themselves. right? Okay, or often they don't want to escape the body. A lot of empaths that maybe have their own physical trauma, maybe have a lot of medical conditions, or been in maybe in an accident, a car accident, things like, particularly with the children will naturally move out the body because if they've been exposed to pain and things like that. Okay, so what the key here is the ability to be more in the moment, right? I'm so glad that I learned meditation very early on, because I think if I hadn't, oh my goodness, I don't know where I'd be, right? Because I developed so many, I mean, at the moment you're seeing me, but if you had seen me a couple of years ago, I had the slightest noise was triggering like seizures. I was horrendous pain. My central nervous system got to such an extent. Now, I'm not saying it was all to do with empathy. I'm certainly not saying that. There was definitely other issues going on, and I had damage down this side of the body. But what I'm going to say is that if you're what we call an unruly empath, and you've not got your empathic, if you're not centered enough and you're not getting your empathy, and maybe, I don't want to say control, but in a way it's kind of, if you've not harnessed your gift, then you have problems. But meditation helps you be more in the moment. And when you're more in the moment, you are able to be more objective. First of all, the ability to meditate helps you relax. The ability to meditate calms your nervous system. The ability to meditate gives you more awareness and helps you be more objective to what is going on. Okay, it slows down the knee-jerk reactions of people pleasing. Okay, now I'm not saying it's a magic wand, I'm still working on it, but it helps a lot. And what I'm talking about is traditional meditation, not things like guided meditation. These are very much, they relax in the body, but they're not always relaxing the mind, because it's just like a story. Traditional meditation that helps you meditate and actually have more gaps within your thoughts is the first tool I believe an empath should use, other than grounding. So that's, I'll say the two of them together. So, but the ability to ground is something, to be fully in your body, and that's something else that you can do. Grounding techniques, I found that most grounding techniques didn't actually work for me. I had to do quite a lot of other things, and that's some things that I talk in a lot of my empaths work. But for now, I would say meditation is the must, and the ability to ground. And then you have to have the ability to recognize your own wounding and recognize when you have over-identified in a certain role, or you're being triggered by your own wounding, and you're actually only functioning and responding to people from that wounding. So I'm going to give you an example, and I mean, I'm still a work in progress in this area, right? So one of the biggest challenges that I have in my business, let's say regularly this happens, that I get people asking me if they can get things for free. Now, I give away lots and lots of free resources in my business, things that I don't need to give for free, but I do. And I've always highly invested in my business, right? And really done a lot of training that most people wouldn't do, spent a lot of money. And my businesses can be quite costly to run. But the reality is I attract a lot of people, and that's part of my wounding, that just want freebies or expect me to constantly lower the price, right? And I, considering for the value of what I give and the tools that I teach in my training, I don't charge a lot of money. I actually should be charging a lot more money, okay? But the reality is I get this a lot. And I'm getting better at it, but sometimes, someone gives me a sob story, and the reality I've learned the hard way is often what people tell you, and what is the absolute truth is not always true. And a lot of people maybe say they don't have money, and it's not that they don't have money, they do, they just don't choose to spend it on that, okay? Or they're choosing it to spend on something else, okay? And sometimes situations are, but I've been many times in my life in complete poverty, because I had so many rare complex conditions that mainstream couldn't help, that I wasn't just half the time, a lot of times not able to work at certain times, even through my self-employment, I had to take time out. But I was also someone who was very young. I didn't have enough stamps. I didn't get proper sickness benefit and things like that. And I had to spend money on my health, but privately in other ways, because no one could do anything on it. I wasn't going to be able to function. That's the reality of my life. Okay. But when I get someone who does that, even though I'm getting better and I'm still working on it, there is something that's triggered within me. And if it's an email and things, I can take my time to answer it. But unfortunately, when you're in a conversation with someone, or someone is looking for a session with you, or looking for it in when you're in a conversation, sometimes it's harder to stop. But I'm learning more and more to stop and say, right, okay, Eileen, this is just your wound and you're feeling sorry for them. They are not taking self-responsibility. They are not valuing what they're doing. They're just trying to get, and not everyone obviously does that, but there is that situation. But what I found myself in many situations, my business was in a situation I was so many serving other people, I wasn't serving myself, and my business could hardly function. For many years, I never even made minimum wage, right? Because of trying to serve other people's needs. And a lot of you will be able to identify with that, right? And there's a fine line. So the first thing is, if you haven't mastered meditation, okay, if it's something that you don't really use, start meditating. Meditation is one of the most powerful things. Now, I do have a free course. I also have my online classes. I've started again my Monday meditation class. And the reality is, I know a lot of people think they start meditation and they think, I can't do that. I can't do that. Often it's how you're being taught or how you're viewing the meditation. So, if it's something that you're struggling, I've taught meditation for 20 years and I was meditating for 30 years. So, I've learned a few tools and techniques, and it's something I would always say to you, when you're going to learn to meditate, make sure you're going to someone that has been doing it a while and really understands what they're talking about. Unfortunately, today, we have a lot of people that have never meditated. They go to a 2-day course or a couple of weeks course and they put themselves out as a meditation teacher. Meditation is very much just as much about unlearning things that you think about meditation and think about how you do things than learning. So it's very much about not just about the technique, but understanding what it's not. And looking at your life from a different perspective. Okay, so meditation, as I said, is the first thing. The ability to ground. Now, one of the easiest ways to ground in a daily basis is to be able to get outside, get near trees and have plants around about you. That naturally helps you get grounded, but even feeling in your body. And one of the ways is to feel in your feet and feel the weight in your feet. And one of the things you can say is my feet to my feet, my knees and my knees, my hips and my hips, my chest and my chest, my shoulders, my arms and my arms, my hands, my hands. So you're energetically bringing awareness. So if your energetic field is, because the aura and things, it can move out of the body. And so what you're doing is bringing yourself back to center in your head. Okay, it's a simple thing. Another thing I would say to you is reduce stimulants when possible. So that's things like sugar, coffee, nicotine, and information, everyone, technology. Now, I know I spend a lot with using technology for my business, and I have to take time. I take a huge chunk in the middle of the day away from technology, and I switch off everything at night. So, unplug, really, really important for an empath. And if it's something you need more help, one-to-one support, get in touch, and I can have, with any of my sessions, people that are interested, I do a free 20-minute chat where you can discuss any challenges that you may have moving forward, or you would like to move forward. Okay. So thank you for listening. And remember that as an empath, that if you can become more aware, learn to meditate and be more mindful, and it helps you become more energetically aware. Naturally, you start to become more energetically aware of what is your energy and what is not yours. And that's another tip to ask yourself every day. If you're feeling a bit odd and think, this is not me, say, is this my energy? Does this energy belong to me? And then you'll get a kind of feeling if it is or it's not. Okay. Have a wonderful day. Bye for now.